Hello my friends, so it's episode 40 of Just Return. We'd actually left Belinda in thought after a conversation with Gus, with no idea that her mother was just up the river. She was concerned because she was wondering just exactly how she would have been if she'd grown up in 1930s Germany. She was turning thoughts over in her head and thinking about her father's attitudes. Yet she knew her father would never have supported genocide of Northern Irish Protestants, and she doubted he would have had he been a German between the wars, have gone along with the persecution without any cause of Jews, Gypsies, Jehovah's Witnesses, Communists, homosexuals and others. He had indeed often pointed to the Irish Constitution and its guarantees of both political and religious freedom. However, she had developed a tiny amount of sympathy for Gus, the young man caught up in Nazi mass hysteria, and that allowed her to treat him with some measure of respect. But when she was alone in her tent at night, she knew that the general opinion of most people on planet Earth would be that any war criminal should be brought to justice. She also knew that while some would have seen her father as a criminal terrorist, others would have considered him a patriotic soldier of freedom and honoured him as a hero. Few, though, would have felt that way about Thomas Devlin, who they would have viewed him as a concentration camp SS officer in a very different light. But she knew that many who would kill and die for their country would hold back and condemn and expose any act of genocide. It would be few courts on planet Earth, she was sure, that would excuse the actions of Gustav Meitzer. The night before, she'd kept these thoughts at bay. They'd enjoyed a good day gathering supplies. She'd just returned from her morning wash at the waterfall, where she had sung and danced, feeling full of life and vitality. In her mind's eye, she was at a students' union dance, but her friends in the rainforest were there also. She returned from the waterfall, and Gus and her enjoyed a hearty breakfast. Today, Gus would fish, and she would wash clothes, and then she would write up her journal as he fished. Across the grassy open patch before their camp, Belinda noticed the familiar movements and calls of the friendly villagers. "Our Indian hunters are coming. I hope they stop for coffee," she said. Gus looked up from his fishing tackle and waved. "Gayat!" Belinda cried as she put water on the fire to heat it. Looking up again, she noticed for the first time that amid the fast approaching Indians there was a white-skinned man with a cap on, and she could see other pale faces. Then, watching for a moment longer, her heart skipped a few beats, and she leapt to her feet. How could it be? She ran toward the party. The smiling white-teethed native men, who were not a hunting party at all, parted as did Hermes and Carla, to reveal the other two white people behind them clearly. Belle stopped, confused. Her emotions were racing so fast that her mental powers just couldn't keep up. Christine, for her part, stopped also. The tears had started to flow down her cheeks, and she said, "You were so late home, young lady, I thought I'd better come and find you." Belle sprang forward into her mother's arms, and the two women just held each other and sobbed and cried. Gustav followed the scene, realizing that this was Belinda's mother. Stephen held out his hand, and the older man took it and shook it furiously with a grip that shocked Stephen. "Gustav Meitzer," he said. "Welcome him." "Stephen Saunderton," he replied. Belle, as she hugged her mother, realized that the man that she hadn't even taken time to focus on was her favourite college lecturer. She sobbed her heart out. She realized that he had helped her mother to get here. She'd had a childlike faith that Stephen Saunderton, the professor, could arrange just about anything. It seemed she was right. The Indian men began to chant and dance around the white people, and Belle thought that either they were just expressing their joy or else they were praising some deity or another. Eventually the party made its way to the tents and were drinking coffee, as they called it. "But how did you know?" Belle asked as she hugged Stephen and thanked him. Christine showed Belinda the photograph. As she looked at it, she thought back to that first encounter, or that early encounter with the Indians. Some of them the same folk who are here right now. She looked at Yukta and Reuinion. Reuinion smiled and said, "Coffee." As Stephen and Gus discussed the way they'd survived and the kindness of the Indians, Belle told her mother and Hermes the sad tale of the crash and the death of Duncan with all the other passengers. She also told them how Gus had saved her life because despite the black cloud in her head around his name, she wanted her mother to know how it was that she was alive and to really give credit to the man that had actually saved her. Carla was kept in touch by Hermes, and the Indians just smiled and chatted among themselves. Belle took her mother to the waterfall, and as they sat there she cried her heart out about Duncan. Her mother comforted her and agreed that Duncan, the environmental, eco-minded Scot, would be best left in the rainforest. Of course his family would have to know the details, but they'd already given up all hope of seeing either of them again. "So what about you, Mum?" Belinda said. "I never gave up. I knew. Well, I'm sure I did know. I just didn't know how I could ever see you, but I was sure I would." "You were always the optimist, Mum." Well, when Professor Saunterton, Stephen, arrived on the scene with a photograph, my lightly burning candle of hope became a powerful searchlight. As they sat there, Belle pointed out the insects and the birds she had discovered. The waterfall, a peaceful and beautiful spot, seemed now like a dreamland to Belle. Had she ever imagined she would be sitting here in this peaceful place with her mother? Of course not. "Did you see that bird there?" she said, pointing at a long-legged, beautiful black bird with a red patch on its head. "It comes here to feed often when I'm here. I think it accepts me." After watching the bird turning over the mud at the edge of the stream as it searched for food, Christine said, "There is something important I must tell you, and I hope you have a good reaction. I need to explain it now, really." Belle looked her mother in the eye. "Nothing you tell me could lessen the joy of you being here, finding me. That's how I feel, Belle. You know that I loved your father very much. I didn't always understand what he did or why, but I loved him and I always will." "Yes, I know that. Have you got yourself a man?" "Well, yes, I have, and you're really responsible." Belinda was trying to make it easy for her mum. "Well, I understand that you were really alone when I got lost. Is that what you mean?" "That's true. I felt very alone until..." "Well, come on, Mum. What did you used to say to me?" Belle laughed. "You're going to be in trouble anyway, so you might as well tell me now." Christine laughed as her own words to her once little girl repeated to her now. "Come on, Mum. Until what?" "Until Stephen Saunterton arrived on the scene." Belle's eyes widened and her mouth too, as her jaw dropped in surprise. "Well, what do you think?" "I'm stunned. But that's wonderful. How long?" Christine told the story and Belle was soon in tears again. "Mum, you're so dear to me, and Stephen Saunterton is the most charming, kindly academic in the world. I couldn't ever have wished for this. But if you two find happiness together, I will dance on the clouds."